TGNT show is intended for mature audiences. Parental discussion is advice. Live long and prosper.
Shall we just start right off the bat with a Las Vegas update?
Are we still talking Vegas, right?
We are.
Talking about Vegas.
Yes. You're coming to Vegas, right? Star Trek Las Vegas may take place every August, but on this show...
This is where we hang out the rest of the year.
Exactly.
The crew has been fatigued now from so many months in space, and they need to take a break. The landing party has been down to check out the terrain while the crew gets ready to play. They say there's only plant life living on this lovely rock, but a rodent up here's wearing a vest.
And Joel on True, ladies and gentlemen, this is Gettysburg 7 coming to you from the floor of Las Vegas, Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino for Star Trek 2015. I'm hurting. Hi, I'm hurting, and this is Terry.
And I'm in pain.
She's in pain. And smiling with us is our good friend, one of our favorite guests, and we love to have him on even when it's not pitching anything, Marc Cushman.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you. I'm not hurting at all. I'm having such a good time here.
You went to bed early last night, didn't
No,
you?
I didn't. I've been up till 2, 3 in the morning every night and getting up at 8 every morning.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know how I'm doing it, but I think my body knows this is the last day, so
Yeah.
I'm just sailing on through.
We're going through it. We're going through it.
Now, walking over here, you were saying sales are going amazing.
We're going to be sold out of book 3s probably within an hour, and I don't think we're taking any books back with us. It looks like we're going to deplete everything we brought, and we brought more than we had last year. We upped it by about 20, 30%. And they're going like hotcakes. So
I'll tell you, it's been an extraordinarily successful convention for most people here.
It's great.
So we're very happy to hear that that the same thing's happening with These Are the Voyages. These Are the Voyages, Volume 3 is out. If you don't have it and you've got the first 2, you better go get it.
You can see her holding it now.
It is, yes, you can see it holding. Can you hear me holding it?
See, here, look.
Wow.
Wasn't that pretty?
Yeah. And, well, congratulations on finishing the 3rd season.
Yes.
Although
it was a hard labor.
It was an extraordinary.
These 3 books combined weigh 10 pounds, and boy, did I scream when they came out of me.
They have sharp edges. They have sharp edges. They would definitely hurt.
They're hardbacks. You can't get them out of the country. You can only get them in the USA.
Woman can never say to you, you don't know.
That's right. And printed in the USA, by the way.
Well, some of you may be new listeners, especially if you've just met us at the convention and picked up our card. And if this is the first interview that you're going to listen to, then you're in for a real treat. If you don't know, or you didn't get to meet Mr. Cushman here while you were at the convention, or you might be listening and you didn't get to come to the convention, Marc Cushman is a wonderful writer, not just in Star Trek, but also a researcher. And this is probably the biggest labor of love I've ever seen come out of an individual author. It is a nonfiction set of books that go through every single episode of the original series, and you use research from memos, internal memos, all the memoranda, all of the photos, and all of the documentation that came out of the Desilu era, out of Roddenberry and Justman's offices.
Right.
And they
out of Bob Justman's garage, actually, but
right.
But it used to be in his office.
And boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of material. And you've spent quite literally the past 6 or 7 years researching this.
No, I spent the past 6 years writing them. Oh. I've spent the past 3 decades researching them. I interviewed Gene Roddenberry in the 1980s, and that's when he gave me access to 40 boxes of show files.
Amazing.
And then over the years, I interviewed then Bob Justman 6 times, Dorothy Fontana 4 times, everybody.
Right.
From on camera, behind camera, over 3 decades. And about 7 years ago, I sat down and started doing the writing.
That's where I got the 7 years stuck in my head.
It took me 2 years per book. And so 6 years total of writing, 100% of my time, but taking all that research that I had accumulated over decades.
It's an extraordinary effort, and it really does show. And you also were one of the few writers to ever be granted or given the Saturn Award for your efforts in this. I mean, truly, it's just a historical. It's a wonderful piece of history because you are quite literally putting in history in a context that the listener, the reader, and the fan can understand, episode by episode by episode.
And one of the things I think that comes out of this, especially for the third season, is it puts to rest the lie, the propaganda from NBC about the ratings.
Right. I license all the Nielsen ratings for every single episode. And as you've seen in reading these books, Star Trek was NBC's top-rated Thursday night show. They moved it to Fridays. It was their top-rated Friday night show during its second season. And yet they said the ratings were bad and tried to cancel it. The truth is, as you know from reading all the memos now from that period, is back then you didn't tell these kind of stories on TV. Commentary belonged with the news division, not the entertainment division. So whenever Gene Roddenberry did a story on sexism, racism, God, Vietnam, he was crossing the line. And the thing is, even NBC's gotten a bad rap through folklore. They said they didn't appreciate the show, they didn't understand the show. They appreciated it, they understood it, they were proud of it. But it was breaking the rules of TV as they existed in that time period. And if they had let Gene Roddenberry get away with it, they'd have to let everybody get away with it. You look at Mirror, Mirror, and you see Nichelle Nichols' navel.
Midriff.
Yet on the same network at the same time, they had to cover Barbara Eden's navel on I Dream of Jeannie. Those miniskirts were America's first look at the miniskirt. We were seeing more flesh on Star Trek than any other show. So the other shows were saying, look, if Star Trek can do it, why can't we? Okay, we got to get rid of Star Trek. So that's where the whole conflict came from.
And Dean didn't help himself.
No, he didn't, but you got to admire him. We're not putting him down.
No.
Because, see, I'm doing books right now for December release on Irwin Allen for the 50th anniversary of Lost in Space and Voyage Beyond Sea. And the reason I took this job, they're authorized. Nobody's ever done a book on Irwin Allen, so I had access to his papers. Yeah, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And nobody even understood him. There was all these rumors about his personality, but nobody understood. But the reason I took them was because of Star Trek. Because if it hadn't been for those shows, there would be no Star Trek.
Right.
The ABC put Voyage on, and they were saying nobody can do half a science fiction movie a week on TV. But he said, look, I did the movie. I saved all the models. I saved all the sets. I saved all the uniforms. We can use stock footage from the movie. We can do this. So ABC put it on. It's winning its time slot. CBS gets jealous, and they come to Irwin and say, give us a show. Gives them Lost in Space. It's winning its time slot. And that's when NBC says, you know what, we'll do the Star Trek. They'd already had the two pilots, but that was the deciding factor in putting Star Trek on.
Right.
Here's another comparison. Well, this is interesting. The day they started shooting the pilot for Lost in Space was the day they started shooting the second pilot for Star Trek, less than 2 miles away, between Fox and Desilu, Culver City, or maybe 5 miles away. And they both finished on the same day, 3 days over schedule, both of them way over budget. The same exact days. But get this. Irwin Allen shows, if you ever watched them, you say that the pilots were always great. And usually the first seasons were very good. The first season of Voyage, the first season of Lost in Space were not bad for pre-Star Trek.
Right.
And then the shows changed, and you think, what was wrong? Was he insane? No. He was doing what the networks told him to do. ABC said, you know, Irwin, every time you feature a monster, which is 1 out of every 4 or 5 weeks, the ratings go up. Let's have a monster every week. And we all thought, why is he doing this every week? Is he crazy? No, the network was crazy. Over at CBS, they said, the first season Lost in Space is great, but it's too scary. You're putting children in peril. And we're following it up with Beverly Hillbillies and Green Acres. Let's make it a comedy block. Make it funnier. Make it less threatening to children. We have a young audience. And he said, if that's what you want, it's not what I want, but if that's what you want because you're paying the bills, I'll do it. NBC comes to Gene Roddenberry and says, quit being political. And he says, no. So he was the anti-Irwin Allen. Not that Irwin didn't have talent. It's just Irwin did what the network said. Gene did not.
Did Gene and Irwin Allen have a friendship?
Here's the amazing thing. Going through the Irwin Allen papers, his archive of files, which are privately held, and I was granted permission to this. I felt like the senior citizen Kings, watching over you with the turn pages. Irwin Allen kept a lot of clippings on Star Trek, every review of Star Trek, everything. And there's memos and letters from his cast members saying, can we be more like Star Trek? And he's saying, I would like to be more like Star Trek, but the networks won't let me.
That's amazing.
And he said, we're on at 7:30. Voyage is on at 7 o'clock on Sunday. Lost in Space is on 7:30 Wednesday. Star Trek is on at 8:30, now 10 o'clock. They can get away with things.
Right.
And NBC was the most liberal network. It had I Spy, which was the first iteration show. They can get away with things. they're not letting us do.
Now, one thing.
There's a lot of Star Trek in this Irwin Allen book. I'm telling you.
But did they have a personal friendship?
No.
Did they know each other?
But they had met.
They knew each other from the circuit.
They met, and I'll tell you something else, and I know this from my conversations with Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry admired Irwin. He understood that Irwin, first of all, was opening the doors for what he wanted to do. Irwin was proving to network TV that you could do a science fiction movie every week on TV and not stay within budget, but almost.
Right.
But he understood that with that early time period, Irwin Allen could not do what Star Trek was doing. So Gene was thrilled not to have a 7:30 time period until the third year. He said, well, you know what? The ratings will be good, and they're not going to clamp down on us too much more than they already are. They would have. They got away with a lot of things at 10 p.m. that they couldn't have if they went into that Monday night slot.
Isn't it crazy that prime time was at 7:30?
Yeah, back then it was.
Now it's game shows and everything until 8 o'clock.
I got to tell you something. Next year we're going to be here with Book 4. And we weren't planning on doing it before.
Right.
But when I was wrapping up Book 3, I found out so much interesting stuff about the 1970s. And I'm going to tease you. I'm going to tell you why we're doing a Book 4. 1 year after they canceled Star Trek, NBC wanted it back in prime time. Paramount wouldn't give it to them because they were making too much money in syndication. They said, ask us next year. NBC came back the following year. We're making more money than we were last year. We thought they'd be burned out by now, but more people are watching. Ask us next year. This went on until 1973 when finally NBC said, give us something, anything, and they got the animated series. The other networks wanted it too. Every pilot film Gene Roddenberry made during the 1970s was because for ABC and CBS, they said, will you bring Star Trek over to us? Paramount said no. So they said, Gene, give us something that's as close to Star Trek as you can. And the reason none of those pilots went to series is they weren't enough like Star Trek.
Wow.
The networks all saw the ratings. They saw what it was doing. They wanted it back on the air. Paramount was the one holding it up.
And was it social change that was causing that?
That's why. See, NBC, the only reason they took it off, really, truly, and you know it's not the ratings, you've seen the Nielsen's.
Yeah.
Right. During the third year, the ratings started coming down, but Spock's Brain won its time slot. It kicked butt. It kicked the 2-hour premiere of Hawaii Five-0 right out of the box. And that show went for 12 years. They knew they could get a good rating and a better time slot. They took it off because it was breaking the rules. They had to. And by 1970, just a year and a half later, the whole climate of television changed. It was free now to tell the type of story Star Trek was doing, and that's when they said, let's get it back on the air.
It's funny that you say that NBC was the most liberal network, because not long after that, you have Norman Lear with CBS opening up all those doors. One stories you could tell.
Once Archie Bunker flushed a toilet on the first episode of All in the Family.
And that's not a joke. That was a huge deal. That was as big as Alfred Hitchcock showing the toilet in Psycho.
That's right.
That was the first time. And all she did was throw a tissue in the toilet.
No, she tore up the notes. And that's the only reason Hitchcock was allowed to do it. The censors came in and said, you cannot show a toilet in a movie. And he said, but I have to show her disposing of this evidence. And they said, well, can't you do it? Can't you imply what she's doing? And he said, you got to see it. There won't be anything in there but the notes. And they gave in only because he promised to do less blood in the movie and promised to do it in black and white so you wouldn't see the red blood. So they traded him to get the toilet. Well, the first episode of All in the Family was the first time we heard a toilet flush. We didn't see it. We heard it flush, and Archie comes down the stairs, and the audience laughed for 5 minutes.
They brought the house down.
Well, that's when NBC said, now we can get away with telling these stories. Let's get Star Trek back on. It's an amazing story, so we have to do Book 4. We have to.
I just got the chills from listening to that because you don't. I realize I was.
See, I know things.
Well, you do. There is no doubt whatsoever, and it's weird to know that I was a part. That I was alive and I was young through all of this, and I remember the toilet flush, but I was young enough not to know that that was a big deal.
Well, I remember my grandmother being disgusted by the play Hair. Because there were naked people on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I think about my grandparents a lot.
Well, they weren't totally naked. They had the hair.
Yeah, well, that's true. But it's weird to know that I was a part of a generation that was, and always has been, truly on the cusp.
Yeah.
I've always been on the cusp of huge changes. I mean, I was born in '64, old enough to remember my first episode of Star Trek was a live episode. I was 4, and it was "Let This Be Your Last Battlefield."
Oh, great one.
And while people now of a certain age look back at it and go, "Oh my God, that was such an overt, morality story," and they beat you over the head with it. For a 4-year-old, it was easy for me to understand, and it was an impact that I will never forget.
But think of it this way, and you're right. I hear a lot of people say that, and I always debate them. Because there's 2 brilliant things about Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. First of all, most people who are racially prejudiced have the IQ of a 4-year-old. So you have to address them on that level to try to get the point across.
Mark has a very good point.
And that scene, which wasn't over the top, well, maybe it was, but there was a subtlety to that scene where in the briefing room where Shatner says, or Kirk says, you keep referring to him as those people. And he says, but they're just like you. And he says, are you blind? Can't you see? And we look at him. And even me looking at the show the first time, I thought, no, they're exactly the same.
Right.
And then he says, well, he's black on this side and I'm black.
Wasn't it a gut punch?
And man, it just knocked the breath out of me.
Yeah.
And I thought that is the most brilliant anti-racial statement I've ever heard on TV and I've ever heard since. Yeah. Nobody's ever outdone it.
No.
Give it its due.
Now, one question I have for you. Judd for the defense. It's a recurring thing. Ratings were always really high for that. I had never heard of that until I read your books. Why did that not have a staying power even that I study this stuff. Yeah. I had never heard of it. But it did really well in the ratings.
Its first year, yeah. But its second year was up against Star Trek at 10 p.m. And if you look at the week-by-week reports in there, I think there's 1 or 2 weeks where it just nudges Star Trek out, but most weeks Star Trek is beating Judd for the Defense. What you really remember about Judd for the Defense is it won the Emmys for a couple of years in a row as like Best Dramatic Series and Carl Betts as Best Lead in an Actor. It was a critically acclaimed show that was doing very respectable numbers for 10 p.m. Friday night. Until Star Trek went against it, and Star Trek was doing decent numbers for that hour. Look, you're not going to get...
Considering the audience, because you even say in there that they were like, Gene was saying the college kids are going to be out, and the younger kids are going to be in bed.
Let's put it this way. Okay, the ratings were about 30% share, 32% share during the first season, but NBC's top-rated show of the night.
Right.
Second season, it dropped down to an average of about 28. That's under the safety margin for that era. These days, a 28% audience share would be amazing.
It would be front pages.
But it was still their highest-rated show. It was their solid anchor for Friday nights, and yet they wanted to cancel it. Well, they moved to 10 p.m. That's a death slot. And still, it was getting around a 27% share on the average. Here's my point. No NBC show prior to that had gotten that big of an audience at 10 p.m. Friday nights. It was the most popular show they had ever had at 10 p.m. on Friday nights.
So the audience really did follow them around.
The ones who were out, but enough people staying home were watching it. They had never done that well. The season before, they had Kraft Music Hall, and it was getting like an 18% audience share. So any network would be thrilled to have it, and by a money point, NBC was. It was all a thing about, we can't let you break these rules, because then everybody's going to break them. They were in a tough spot, the network. That's what my books do, is I try to make you feel empathy for both sides. There's no bad guy.
And I feel a ton of empathy reading this. I felt for Fred Freiberg.
Oh, my God. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, he got a bum rap for decades. Yeah. And you read this third book, and you find out that this is why Shatner says he did a yeoman's job. And Nichelle Nichols has said that, and other people. Fred Freiberger and Arthur Singer were unsung heroes. Those two were rewriting all the scripts. They every season, it was the producer and the story editor doing all the rewrites, 70% dialogue rewrites. And Freiberger, they were shutting the lights off at 6:20 in the middle of a dialogue scene. Paramount says, that's it, no overtime. They're down to 5.5 days per episode. They got to get it done in 5.5 days. NBC's not returning his phone calls. the mid-season, remember that? And Fred Freeberger talking about that, and he says what they're doing is criminal. That was him. He said, we're in the middle of shooting our 16th episode, and we don't even know if we're going to do a 17th, and they're not going to tell us until Monday, and that's the day we're supposed to do production. I'm writing the script now.
That was the point in the book where I literally got angry reading. I got angry at NBC because the corporate game they were playing with people's lives.
Yeah. How do you make good episodes under those conditions? So when you look at episodes as good as All of Our Yesterdays and Requiem for Methuselah and everything, you go, they did this under those conditions? The man's brilliant. He truly is. And when I looked at the first draft scripts and then the final draft scripts, he and Arthur Singer single-handedly were making it sound like Kirk and Spock. Bob Justman said that year in a memo, he said, if we do get a fourth year, which NBC says we won't, but if we do, the way it's going, with the budget, all we're going to be able to do is one long scene in the briefing room where they talk about what happened because the money just wasn't there and the support wasn't there. Now, Freddie really did a remarkable job. Look, there were a few judgment calls he made that were off. Let's have the hippies sing.
Yeah.
But, for that era, that Let's Go to Eden, that song, was 1 year before Joni Mitchell wrote Woodstock.
Yeah.
If you really go back in time, it wasn't inappropriate. It was not. It was valid. And you look at that episode 2 and talking about a disease that's coming about because of sterile environments, we're starting to see that. We feel that here in Vegas in these hotels.
Yes, we do.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I think Freddie finally gets his due in book 3.
And his children talked about how people didn't, in his background, when people would say, "Oh, he doesn't understand," I was like, a POW and all of that.
He was hiring blacklisted writers. But look, get this, and they always said he's the show killer. Every show he's ever been on, he killed. He didn't produce the last year of Wild Wild West. He produced the first year. He was the one who gave a green light to Dr. Miguelito Loveless, which is why he brought Michael Dunn onto Star Trek. Yes, he produced the last year of Space 1999, but it was canceled. The only reason it got a second year is because he agreed to come over and do it. It wasn't being renewed. And so he was not a show killer.
No.
He wasn't always right, but either was Gene Kuhn, either was Gene Roddenberry, either am I. We're not always right, but he was the one. You talked about Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. You read it in the book.
Yeah.
Gene Kuhn wrote that script, A Devil and an Angel.
Yep.
And in 3 days before they were going to start filming, Judd Taylor, the director, comes in and he says, "This is so obvious." And he says, "Well, what do you want to do about it?" Freddie says. And he says, "What if half white and half black?" And Freddie turned to Arthur Singer and he said, "Let's get Matt, the makeup guy, Phillips. Let's get Phillips in here and see if he can do it. And if he can do it, Arthur, you and me are going to start rewriting the script. I'll do the first half, you do the second half, and we'll split it up because we start filming Monday." And they literally were rewriting that script as it was being filmed. Neither of them put their names on it, but they wrote those lines about, "Can't you tell the difference between us? Wow. He's black on the right side." That was Fred Freiberger and Arthur Singer. And they've never gotten their due. They do now.
Yeah.
And look, and I show their mistakes as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like I show Gene's mistakes.
Right.
But at least I give them credit for what they did right.
Right. Well, I mean, it's always just been such a fascinating history, and more so than we've ever known before. The detail work that you've put into these books is extraordinary.
And the actors are even commenting on this book.
That's why Walter did the foreword for book 2. He said because he loved book 1.
Yeah.
But then when book 2 came out, he calls me up and he says, "Now I know what was going on in the other rooms."
Right.
He knew what was going on in his room.
They were never privy to it.
No, they weren't.
And they were kept away from it.
They weren't shown the memos. They weren't shown the ratings. They weren't shown anything.
And one of the things Terry and I have talked about on the show is, I call it the Shat Bash.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this
How
up.
much he fought for the show as well. But yeah, you said he had to be he was hurting about everything, the cancellation and everything, but he felt he had to be the captain.
Let's talk about that in a minute, because right now at this very moment, George Takei's on stage bashing Shatner, and everybody laughs when he does it. But you read these books, 19 out of 20 people I interviewed, the guest stars, everybody, the crews, I said, was Bill Shatner a problem on the set? No, are you kidding? He was wonderful.
Yeah.
He was the life of the party. He was gracious. He was the kids that came on
I was going
Miri.
to say, the kids always talked
He
about.
made them feel welcome. You see that picture of him in there, that little 12-year-old on Journey to Babel who's visiting the set, and he's pulling up her pigtails and giving her horsey rides on his back. He was great. The reason Nichelle and Walter, not so much Walter, but mostly Nichelle and George Takei and a little bit of Jimmy Doohan, they felt that Shatner was taking their parts away. Why did they feel that? Two reasons. He was the only one with the clout to ask for script changes. And on the set, sometimes they saw him say, this line isn't working, let's give this to so-and-so. And so they thought, he's the guy who's making my part smaller because they'd see the first draft script and they'd have a bigger part. You read these books. This Side of Paradise was supposed to be Sulu's story, not Spock's. Sulu was the one who was going to fall in love. It wasn't Shatner who took that away. It was a memo from Dorothy Fontana saying, wouldn't it be more interesting if it was Spock? Wolf in the Fold was supposed to be Sulu, accused of being Jack the Ripper. It wasn't Shatner who took that away. It was Stan Robertson at NBC and Bob Justman simultaneously on the same day, each writing a memo saying, wouldn't this be a better story for Scotty? It was the other people doing it, and they weren't doing it for an agenda to hurt an actor. They were doing it to make the best show they could make. And let's face it, these are the stars. It's Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
So it was more of a trapping of Shatner's position and having his appearance to his coworkers, having it make it look that way.
Because they witnessed him change a few lines on the set sometimes. And let's face it, he's a brilliant writer. He's a good director, even though Star Trek V wasn't a great movie. But Shatner really has major talent in all areas. And his instincts are almost always correct. Not always, but almost. Fred Freiberger said Shatner was his right-hand man during the third season. He says, I couldn't have gotten through it without Bill Shatner. Bill Shatner really rallied for us in the show. So I hate hearing George take shots at him. I think George is building a new career bashing Shatner, and he doesn't need to. George Takei has so much talent; he doesn't need to do that.
That's what I've said on our show.
He has.
He's made almost a career out of taking shots, but we felt he went too far recently. And Terry even agreed with me when he said, Bill never mentions me unless he has something to sell. And I was like, I've never heard William Shatner take a shot like that unless something's said about it.
Well, and then he's making a big deal now about, he says, well, Bill didn't come to my wedding. And Bill did a rebuttal and he said, I don't even know the guy. Yeah. And everybody's saying, how can you say that about George? You worked with him. No, what Bill meant is, I don't even know who he is anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Because I've heard Bill on interviews saying, I don't understand what his thing is. I've tried to talk to him. What's he doing? What he's doing is he's getting sound bites everywhere. Yeah. And so I get angry when I hear people applaud. Because Shatner was the perfect Captain Kirk. Yeah. I love Star Trek Continues. I like Vic's feeling about it. Vic
we were
says,
just going to talk to you about that because you act as a script consultant for that.
I'm a script consultant, yep. And I did a fair amount of rewriting on the Mirror sequel. Gave him a lot of deep notes on that.
And the director, James Kerwin, is sitting right next to us.
And good James is so talented. My God, all of them are. I went to the screening last night.
How much did that actress look like?
Miramani?
No. Mirror.
Oh, the one that looked like Barbara Luna. Yes. And you've heard Vic tell the story about how he met her. They were out looking for Spock's goatee, and she was in the store, and it turned out she was an actress.
I thought they digitally did that.
But have you seen the most recent episode?
Oh, yes.
And they got Reyna, Edith Keeler, Miramani.
Stunning. And Edith Keeler is the same actress from Star Trek Renegade.
Yes.
Right.
Now, I've written the 5th episode, which is coming up. It's going to blow you away.
We saw that trailer. We were at the thing Friday night.
Well, wait till you see what happens after that trailer.
I was the only one.
I was very proud of my co-host who noticed
the different colored uniforms.
Yeah.
I was all excited about that.
Here's the thing, and the reason I didn't go down there and stand with him when Vic said, hey, everybody come down who's involved with the show.
Right.
I didn't.
Well, you're 7 feet tall.
That's one reason. I look silly standing next to everybody else. It's 6'4". But anyway.
We're like a before and and after
I'm
photo.
going to go down because even though I'm helping on the script end, these are the guys that are making it. And when I was watching that thing on the big screen, I'd already seen the episode. I'd already read up the drafts of the scripts and given notes. And I brought in John D.F. Black, who's working as my script consultant with me.
So awesome.
And I love what James said. He says, I'm getting notes from John D.F. Black saying Gene wouldn't have approved of this. It's great. But when I'm watching that thing on the big screen, and I'm watching Kirk have his breakdown on the bridge after he's resisting Spock and McCoy saying, oh, you're ganging up on me now, are you? And finally on the bridge, he realizes he can't stay in command with what he's going through in this episode. And you watch Vic. You watch the nuances in his face. The lines were there. I knew that. But you see the moisture in his eyes like Shatner used to get. And you see the twitch, and then reaction shots of everybody on the bridge, and you go, this cast is amazing. The direction that James is giving is amazing. The material is amazing. The ship, the lighting, the editing, everything. Doug Drexler's effects.
We had the chance. We interviewed Doug Drexler for over an hour yesterday.
Yeah. Well, you can't shut Doug up any more than you can shut me up.
Well, we were thrilled to have him on, as we are you. But it's nice to speak to you about Continues, because it is, as far as I'm just in love with it. I'm loving everything that's coming out of there.
Here's what I was feeling watching that the other night.
It's so amazing to see it.
Now, again, I had already read the scripts and given notes. I knew the story, and I'd already seen the episode once before when it was first cut. It kicked me. It kicked a gas.
It pulls the. If you have not seen White Irises yet, everybody, you have to, because it really does. It sucks the air out of your lungs.
Numerous times.
It's a wonderful, wonderful piece, and something that we something that you don't get to. We didn't get to hear these stories. These are the stories that I always felt were missing, or we now really are. The heart of the Continues is you're getting to hear the stories of what it was like for a person in Kirk's position to have to deal with these things. It's not like he was like, oh, gee, and next week, on an episodic basis, it's like, okay, it's like a clean slate. Everybody's happy-dory again. And no, you get to see that things that happened in the past do have an effect on the future. And that's what I love the most about this particular episode, is because we're finally starting to see those character studies that we didn't get a chance to see because the stories ended 3 years. In 3 years.
I had an idea for a story that I may send to Ben. But all I'm going to say is, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I want you to play Sarah.
All right. I've done a fair amount of acting.
But you know Sarek from your...
I do.
And
I do know Sarek.
I have an idea with the Romulans and Sarek and subspace.
Would I look okay in pointed ears?
Yes.
You'd look okay.
I think you'd look fabulous.
Now, did you go to the tribute for Leonard Nimoy?
No, because I was stuck at my table writing.
We're all kind of changing the
But I helped do it.
She let me go to that one.
I did.
But I was involved in a tribute they did over at the Saturn Awards a few weeks ago.
Nice.
We did a wonderful tribute, and we had Adam Nimoy come on stage.
Nice.
I arranged for him to come there, and I wrote the piece in their booklet, and they did a wonderful, wonderful tribute of Clips and Adams. What he said when he came out was wonderful. And he's doing this film,
doing the documentary. It's awesome.
Which I'm helping him a little bit with, but it's his bag, and his dad was involved before too. So they wanted to do it together, and he's going to interview me for that coming up. But I'm so happy he's doing it.
Yeah, we are too.
And
we were so
that
happy
was
to hear
such
the
a big
funding.
loss.
Yeah,
oh my God!
really
When Leonard
the conscience of Star Trek, and your book points it out as well, where he would fight so hard to keep Spock. And the Cloud Miners was a perfect example.
Well, and whom God's destroy.
And I will tell you about the Cloud Miners. You know what's always annoyed me about that episode? Honestly? I never, ever, I think I was the only guy that didn't find Droxine to be the woman, the hot woman. I loved the rebel.
Yeah, then you're not alone. Me too.
Right? And I did not know until your book that was Fred Williamson.
Yeah. I know. Nobody knew. No, I know. Who's famous black exploitation filmmaker?
The Hammer.
Yeah, The Hammer.
That's so cool.
Football player.
And if you know the movie MASH, the greatest war movie ever made, that he was Spear Chucker Jones.
Right. And he played that little part in the Cloud Minders just as a favor to the producer.
And yeah,
I interviewed him for the book. I know.
Yeah, I know, and that blew my mind. I was like, no, he doesn't mean, oh my God, it is him.
It is him. With the mask and the long hair.
And I have a real special spot because he does stuff for Wounded Warriors. So it's a real special part.
Well,
one more thing, because we know we never shy from controversy, and neither do you. From what you're hearing, Simon Pegg and who's the director?
Oh, Justin Lin.
Justin Lin saying about Star Trek Beyond. What are you thinking so far?
I'll wait and see it. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I have mixed feelings about the film series, the new film series.
Yep.
It's damn entertaining.
Yep.
I've seen each one twice, and I
refused to see.
I had a ball
the second time.
Really?
And I own it.
Yeah, but it can't even come close to what they're doing on Star Trek Continues, because the difference is, and I went and saw Renegade, and then right after that, Star Trek Continues. And Renegade's very, very entertaining. But the thing about Star Trek Continues and the original TOS is what we feel about those characters and the themes of the stories. And Star Wars, as much fun as it is, and Renegades, as much fun as it is, and the new Star Trek reboot, as much fun as it is, to me, is just a lot of action, a lot of winking at the camera, Spock fighting with the new pawn and flying against a wall and then dusting himself off. And you're saying, wait a minute, he's flesh and blood, his bones would be broken. They're making it Spider-Man, they're making it Superman. It's not the Star Trek we love, but it's still fun. It's a damn good time. Yeah. But we know what's better. And that's why we're doing Star Trek Continues, because we know what's better.
Well, do we get to expect to see you here at the 50th anniversary convention?
We will be here before,
covering
the 1970s and the animated series and Phase 2 and the first couple movies and the birth of the conventions and all that stuff I was telling you about NBC wanting it back and Paramount going, And that's book 4, and the following year is the 30th anniversary of Next Generation.
Right.
We'll be back here with book 1 on Next Generation. Let me tell you what. Let me tell you something.
I'm so excited.
I saw Scott Mance the other day, and he came in.
You're not going to be doing 7 volumes, are you?
No.
Okay. I was like, kill yourself.
I will if I kill myself. And you don't need 7 volumes. No, and that's no offense against Next Generation. TOS was the birth.
Right.
It was painting the blank canvas. It really needs that examination. And you look at those memos between Kuhn and Roddenberry and Fontana, and especially Justman, so funny. How can you edit those down? You know? And just all the lies about the ratings. I had to put in all the ratings reports to show the truth, and that takes up pages. Okay? But Next Generation, it's already there. The fans are there.
Right.
We don't need a book on each season. I think it'll be probably a 2 or 3 book set when it all comes together. But the first book will be maybe the first 2 seasons, the Roddenberry years, which are not the best, but they may be the most interesting to read about.
Yep.
Right. But here's why I'm doing it. People have been asking me for a couple of years, are you going to do Next Generation? I said, only if I can get the memos. Because the memos are the spine to these books.
Exactly.
Hearing Gene Roddenberry and Dorothy Fontana, hearing them tell the story in the moment, not 40 years later trying to remember, but in the moment, writing the memos the day we're writing the script, the day we're shooting the episode. Well, I've taken delivery of the memos to the first season.
Congratulations.
And I've got those, so now we're going to have a book.
And it's so much fun to read, because Dorothy Fontana did not hold back.
No.
She still does
hold back.
Did you notice the difference?
Biting wit.
Did you know the difference in her memos from season 1 to season 2? She started imitating Bob Justman.
Yeah.
She started becoming Bob Justman Jr. because she said, if Bob can say what he thinks, I can say what I think. And when season 2 memos are kill me. I love reading those, especially on the Apple.
Yeah.
And I love Bob Justman's memo where Val was originally described as a building, and he's inside the building, and Kirk's talking to the building, and Bob Justman's saying, I've been reading this thing, and I'm on page 30, and I'm trying to imagine our audience's reaction to Kirk talking to a building.
And I love it when his memos would start. This memo might seem quirky, but I just woke up after reading the story, that kind of thing, and I would be laughing.
I'm on page 35, and Kirk is finally starting to do something. He's disagreeing with Spock on something or whatever.
I have to give you credit too, because there's times you made me laugh in this. You're talking about something, and you put your own wit in there about what they were doing, going back and forth.
Well, I can be sarcastic. I can be Bob Justman.
But you also give very fair treatments to, like, the way to eat. For those that haven't read it, we get Mark's synopsis of it and his views on it, and then we go into pre-production. And you say, this was good, but certainly there's a lot of bad in there too.
And I keep that very brief though.
Yeah,
because
but it's always interesting because you gave me things that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, but the problem I have about other books is they'll give you 5 pages of them telling you the plot. As we know the plot. You can watch the episode. Show us the memos. And so when I do my little assessment, I'd always try to keep it down to a paragraph because it's like, I'm glad you like it, but I'm humble, believe it or not, and I'm thinking, well, who cares what I think? Let's get to the memos.
I looked at it, you were doing a 60 minutes intro.
Yeah, exactly.
You were doing that and then getting into the story.
Because I want people to realize that I hear too many people going, well, I met a fan, and if he's listening, I'm sorry, I won't mention your name, and you were a wonderful person, but he said to me, what's your favorite episode? I said, well, one of my favorite episodes is Shore Leave. Because it's such an imaginative episode, and it's so touching in so many ways when Kirk meets Ruth. Right. And just so many great things about Shore Leave.
Great music.
And the running, you're actually outdoors and everything else. And he said, I can't stand that episode. And I said, you're kidding. Why? He says, well, because they tried to paint some of the trees red, and they're a little blotchy in the background. And I said, so you are ignoring this brilliant writing, this brilliant acting, this brilliant direction because somebody threw a little red paint on a tree? Cut it out. So that's why I would do my assessments. I said, come on, guys, let's look at the material here. Let's look what this episode says and does. And the story of The Way to Eat is actually very good.
Yes. Yeah. And and there's something you and we've discussed this every time you've been on. We've been ahead of the curve. Spectre of the Gun is starting to get the respect it deserves.
Good. Sue Osborne, who had only seen a few episodes of Star Trek when she was young, and she was my editor on this stuff, so I would show her episodes. And I showed her the entire first season and part of the second. We didn't have time to show her the entire stuff because we had deadlines coming up, but I'd show her certain episodes. And I said, well, let me show you a handful of third season episodes. So I showed her a lot of Troyes, which I've always liked, and Fillion Webb, and all our Yesterdays. And I showed her The Empath, which she really liked, which Gene Roddenberry really liked, even though a lot of fans don't. But I think it's a really sensitive, interesting episode. I showed her Spectre of the Gun, and now she'd already seen all the others, including the entire first season. And she said, this is my favorite episode of anything you've shown me. She said, it's so surrealistic, it's so imaginative, it's so unique.
And one of the Star Trek Online developers during their Q&A was asked, like, in Star Trek influences and how they do things. And he brought up the exact same thing, Spectre of the Gun, the lighting.
The lighting. The set design, which was Bob Justman's idea about in partial sets because of the budget, but it worked out. And you know, and you find out the things that didn't make it in. Mm-hmm. And one thing that NBC made them take out of that script was the reason the Melkotians, is that what they were called, or the Meltons, which were they, whatever they were, that said, Earthlings, go away, you are diseased, don't come here, and they made them go back to Tombstone. The reason they didn't want any contact with Earth in the first draft script is because they had been receiving TV signals from Earth from 200 years earlier, and they were seeing all the violence of the 1960s, Vietnam War clips, shoot-'em-up westerns, and they said, we can't have you. And there's this memo in there from NBC saying, you can't do this. It makes us, the network, look bad like we're promoting violence.
Like Patterns of Force.
Exactly. So they had to take that out.
Patterns of Force. The Roman Empire.
Bread and Circuses.
Bread and Circuses.
Well, I love that. The memo from NBC said you can't say brought to you in living color.
Yeah.
They had to take out the word living because if we remember the NBC Peacock, it said the following program is brought to you in living color on NBC. So the note from NBC said take out the word living, brought to you in color. Because they didn't want any reflection on them with the violence that we're seeing. I love the memos.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
It's an amazing insight.
Well, it's a truly remarkable insight, not just into Star Trek, but into an industry that brought it around despite its efforts to not bring it around, seriously, and provides us a wonderful history to those who aren't old enough to understand what things were like and really remind them that we're still there. We're still seeing the evolution of Star Trek. We're going to see where it goes in the future. It's 50 years old now. No chance by the attendees at this month or at this year's convention. I can tell you, no sign of slowing down whatsoever.
It's been a great.
It's picking up and picking up and
I've
picking
heard a
up.
lot of people say this.
It's going to outlive us.
It really will.
And I'm happy about that.
I am too.
Now, how can people get a hold of your book?
You can get this on Amazon.com. You can get it you can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get it on Kindle. The best place to get it is direct from the publisher, Jacobs Brown Press, but the website's easy to remember. It's thesearethevoyagesbooks.com. It's the best price, and they're the only ones that come with bookmarkers that match the cover.
I have all of them.
And autographed by yours truly.
Well, Mark, we will definitely have all those links on our show notes, as we do every time we get to talk to you. Congratulations again on Book 3. We're so excited about Book 4, and I am now all giddy about the ideas that we're going to see TNG book come out in the future.
In closing, I got to tell you, Scott Mance, I started mentioning this before. You know Scott,
yes.
Access Hollywood. And he's been such a great supporter of this book series. He came to my booth the other day, and every time I've seen him in the last...
And you didn't push him over?
7 months. Oh, you didn't come over here? No. Every time I've seen him in the last 7 months, he's been depressed because he was always, when's the next book coming out? When's it coming out? Can I come over to your house and get a copy? You know, so I can have it first. And I'm reading the first one for the third time. I need the third book. So ever since I gave him the third book, he seemed a little down because he didn't have another one to look forward to. And he came to my booth the other day, and Scott's always up, but I can tell the difference. And so he's being medium up. And he said, so what's going on? I said, we're doing Book 4. And he just lit up like a Christmas tree. And he said, are you kidding me? And suddenly he looked like a little kid on Christmas morning.
That's awesome.
I have a Book 4 to look forward to.
That's exactly it. Well, we feel the exact same way. My husband, no, mind you, I've been married to him for 28 years. He is not a reader.
Yeah.
These are the books he's read.
He is well read.
He is very well. He's an astronomy guy, right? So
these
he reads
are
the science
intimidating.
books. Well, he reads
Like
the
you can
science
take
books.
them one episode at a time
And watch the episode.
Yes.
They are easy enough. Yeah, the chapters are not so long that it's intimidating.
15 pages and watch the episode.
You'll know what I mean when I say you can read this book in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean by that.
It's not a bad thing.
I wrote it in the bathroom. What are you talking about?
That explains.
Well, and also, too, is I want people to understand that although
You know what I meant by
I
that,
know what
right?
you mean.
I'm going to make a recommendation, however, and that is although you can read this on an ebook, my recommendation is don't. This is something you're going to want to touch.
It's a
You're
book
going to want
with
to open. It has weight, but because it's a reference, to me it's a reference book. Reference books are hard in digital because you can't flip back and forth between pages.
Because
you're going to need to do that.
You'll say, like in Turnabout Intruder, when they were discussing in blah blah, and then I go back, okay, I remember that now.
Right, exactly.
You need to be able to touch and to feel and to move
look
this
what
back
you
and
opened
forth.
right up to.
And I know
All these pictures and the way they're arranged.
And I
you see
love the
different
unaired
variants.
stills.
Yeah.
So
There's over 400 in Book 3 alone.
it's just an extraordinary piece of work, and I'm not exaggerating when I say monumental.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much for joining
And
us.
you know, not just because of this, you are one of our favorite people.
Truly.
Just because you're our friend.
Thank you so much. I felt it the other night, man. Thank you.
Until next time, guys, live long and prosper.
And keep on reading.
Joel Untrue, citizens.
Music for the G&T show is provided by Warp 11, Andrew Allen, Thor, and 5 Year Mission. This has been a Busy Little Beaver production.
Some dude walks out, proceeds to explain what it's all about. I sure want to leave. I think you'd agree, but we cannot leave till we find out what it's all about. It's all make-believe, nothing is permanent down here. It's just an amusement park. Bones is now alive, so it's okay for him to say, I'm a doctor, not a shish kebab. Apparently it's okay if we trust in